G'day, fans, and welcome back to another exciting episode of Talking Stuff. Everything's happening at the moment. Acolyte is still being shown on TV. Very, very exciting stuff. And for Star Wars fans, Docky Who finished this week. Aron is with me right now. There's news, there's reviews, there's things coming up. I tell you what, Aron, my mind is practically blowing right before your very eyes. What do you reckon, old son?
I don't know what you're talking about. But what I was going to say, we've been talking sci-fi stuff for 40 years plus, and we're not showing any signs of running out of things to talk about, are we? So that's a good sign for the show.
Yeah, if sci-fi, science fiction sci-fi was a sponge, we're just squeezing, squeezing that puppy, getting out those last little drops, dunking it into the kitchen sink, and just squeeze it again. It's never going to run dry.
Ooh, it does get in.
The question is whether you want to lather yourself up with said sponge. That's the question I got to ask you.
Yeah.
G'day, fans. Welcome to the show. There's a lot to cover off tonight. It's absolutely fantastic. Things that have just popped up that we haven't even advertised yet for the particular evening's festivities. And the coolest thing that occurred, and I didn't even know this even happened until Aron sent me through some hot pictures, is that Robert Patrick, the old T-1000, was in town, or Doggett from the X-Files, if I recall correctly, popped into the Astor Cinema to yap on about stuffs, Mr. Aron. And, of course, Mr. Aron himself was actually there. How was it, old son?
It was a really amazing night. And as you can see from my photos, I was in the front row, which is always good. And I would position myself opposite his chair because it was on an angle. So he was looking directly at me. So he was getting these creepy, freaky vibes all night because he would occasionally make eye contact. So I was making eye contact with the Terminator.
Oh, geez. I like the way you say that. He's making eye contact with you. It's like, where's that going? Karan said, yeah, he got it right. Someone met the T-1000. We've got a hotline again from the Ukraine. Good to see. Yeah, I think this person was here with us for the Docky Who chat the other day and they've returned. So hopefully this is 1 hour of total sci-fi madness that you are never going to get back, but hopefully you enjoy it. And as Russell said, Uncle Aron, we're going to watch crap sci-fi today. Oh, geez. Well, is that us? We're the crap sci-fi guys. Unbelievable. So how was it, dude? Seriously, the Robert Patrick thing at the Astor. Tell us all about it.
I was shocked on a number of levels. I was shocked how many people were there. The Astor, for people who haven't been there, is a huge old grand theatre. It has 2 levels and it was sold out. So I think it's a 500-seater. It's a big blockbusters these days don't even sell out. So this was pretty amazing for a 30-year-old movie to sell out. The other thing is Robert Patrick, okay, he's being paid to be there, but he was a very good guest. He did the whole night being incredibly accommodating and in a good mood with fans. I stopped the photo session to say I didn't want to smile. I wanted him to do a Terminator grimace, and he stopped everything, and he did it for me, which I thought was fantastic. And then one of the things I absolutely loved about it, and this is a suggestion I think all conventions and all panels should be able to take a lesson from. There was no questions from the audience on the night. For the 7 days leading up to it, you could submit a question and they asked questions from the audience, but it meant that the questions were much more relevant to everyone, because I'm sure you've been stuck in a convention where someone gets up and says, I want to become an actor. What tips can you get? And you're just like, oh, good one. That's a waste of a question kind of thing.
Yeah.
So was impressed by the venue, loved the Astor, was impressed by the guest, and the whole setup went pretty smoothly.
So did you get to pose any questions that were read out on the night or not?
No, I didn't. I didn't realize until the night that you had to do it in the 7 days leading up. What was really good, though, they didn't just cover Terminator. They covered Terminator, of course. They covered the X-Files. They covered Fire in the Sky, which I absolutely forgot he was in, and that's another fantastic movie. And then they talked about Peacemaker as well. So they really covered all different aspects from his movie, and the crowd absolutely loved it. And because he was there and they showed the Terminator movie, every time he went on, his scenes were on in the movie, the crowd went nuts. It really reminded me of the old 24-hour sci-fi marathons at the old Valhalla, which is the Westgarth now.
So I was going to ask you, which version of the film did they show? The normal theatrical release or the extended
They
release?
showed the theatrical print, and I actually do like the director's print better. I've never seen the director's print on the big screen, though, so I don't know if it actually exists in a format they can show. But you know what? It was fine. It's still I think, one of the best movies ever made.
You know what? I tend to agree with you. Yeah, I can imagine that sort of scenario. The vibe would have been absolutely palpable, because I think you mentioned that Robert Patrick hasn't been in Australia before, so it definitely would have been an exclusive sort of gig.
Well, as far as I know, he's never been to I would have got his autograph because I love Terminator. I've never caught him here before. He might have been, but I can't remember him doing it.
So this explains the photograph. When you sent me this photo, I only got this like 10 minutes before we went on air. I thought, well, clearly Robert isn't happy with the fact you're wearing a Star Wars shirt to a Terminator gig, but you asked him to pose like this. Is that correct?
Yeah, what happened was it was very, very fast because they had so many people to get through. And I scored 2 photos because it was click, move, click, move. And the first one I was actually saying to him, look, do you mind? I don't want to smile. I want you glaring like the Terminator. And he actually stopped everything and said, let me get in character, turn around and glared at the camera. So I was very happy with that.
How good is that? Because I looked at that picture and I go, oh, dude, you caught him on a bad day. So there you go. So that is actually very, very cool. Now, we don't know if he'll ever come back or why he even was out here in the first place. But yeah, clearly the Astor was the place to be last night for those who went. And it sounds like, by all accounts, it was a very, very successful night and very good experience by everybody. So, which is absolutely fantastic, Mr. Aron.
It was, and as if we couldn't get a better experience than that, we've got something else I wanted to talk about.
Yeah, from the highs of Terminator 2 all the way down to good old Docky Heaven Who.
to the even highs of Doctor Who. So one of the things I've mentioned before, the Sirens of Audio are a podcast that mainly look at the Doctor Who audios, but have built up quite a following and often have the actual actors and actresses from the audios and from Doctor Who on. And they're Australian, and they have, over the last 18 months, been bringing actors from the show to Australia for their sort of one-day events. And I have been to a couple of them, and they're absolutely fantastic. They are some of probably the best Doctor Who fan events I've ever been to, actually, from the location. The guys are from Sydney, and they actually found a Melbourne location, which is like I didn't know about and is much better than a lot of the locations that the Melbourne organisers use, which is over near Royal Park by the zoo. But they've got some more things coming up this year. Fraser Hines is coming up in September. Oh, yeah. And of course, they usually run it with a VIP night with a dinner with him for a limited number of fans. And then they have a more general day with questions and answering, merchandise, games, and that kind of things. Because they're Aussies and because they're bringing out Doctor Who actors, I'd ask anyone who feels like they'd like to go to support them, just so we can continue to have this level of event on in Australia, because it is quite successful and they're bringing over people that we haven't seen for a long time or haven't seen before. So being an Aussie, I'd like to see them, and so supporting them will get those people coming across.
Very well spoken. Now, regarding Robert Patrick, I like this one from Aron. He said, yeah, he has come here once before. He came from the future. Oh, awesome. Jeffro, I like this one. He was at the Armageddon convention in New Zealand too. You know, when Jeffro can say, when I was last in New Zealand, because he's a bit of a global trendsetter now, he's all over the place. But there you go. So the lad, as in Robert Patrick, is obviously enjoying his time in the Southern Hemisphere, which is very, very groovy. But yes, so if you want to catch up with some dockies, get some Doctor Who action. That is the way to go, Mr. Aron, and all power to it. Now, with that in mind, as you know, fans, good old Doctor Who finished on Tuesday, final episode, blah, 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 blah. We did a review of the show, and we picked up on something. We go, oh, hang on. Now, because, as we all know, that Aron's a bit of a capitalist dog, always looking for a great marketing and merchandising opportunity, right? Something popped up in the episode. We looked at it and go, that is a top idea. We can do something with that. For those who don't know what we're talking about, we've got this sequence here with Sutek, right? Now, that leash on around his neck ain't a leash, right? If you're wondering, what is that? Well, funny enough, it's an Oki strap, right? So how groovy is that? An Oki strap is holding on to good old Sutek as it drags him through time, blah, 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 blah. And, of course, we thought, well, that's just a fantastic marketing and merchandising opportunity. How about we produce, you're seeing it here first, fans, you can't find it anywhere online, the official Doc Docky Ockies. So what do you reckon there, Mr. Aron? Docky Ockies is the way to go, eh? They're Time Lord tough. And as you can say,
Yeah,
they're always able to withstand the good tugging. Absolutely love it.
yeah. And being a Doctor Who fan, I know once in a while you need a good tug. So if you've got some Docky Ockies, you're never going to be caught short.
I tell you what, how fantastic. The Docky Ockies, but of course they transcend not just time and space, but different franchises as well. Because even in Star Wars, Docky Ockies can still be used. Is that right, Mr. Aron?
Yeah, Docky Ockies are used by Admiral Motti. And as you can see there, one of the key scenes from Star Wars, the original version of it, had quite different dialogue where like Motti is asking Vader, please use your ancient sorcerer's ways to conjure up an escape plan. And Vader was actually originally saying, I untangle you for the last time, because these Ockies can actually withstand extreme force.
Absolutely fantastic. And you're thinking, well, they've appeared in Star Wars. Where else have they popped up? And in Star Trek, Mr. Aron.
Yeah, I was actually hoping Colin would be here because he might be able to authenticate this, but embarrassing plumbers crack solved with Time Lord technology far in advance of the Federation. Scotty uses Docky Ockies, and as you can see there, they are quite load-bearing Docky Ockies, aren't they?
Oh, I tell you what, they're a multi-purpose Docky Ocky. Absolutely fantastic. And of course, yeah, you don't want if you're out looking out for some xenomorphs, you don't want this to happen to you. Is that right, Mr. Aron?
Of course, because space jockeys use Docky Ockies. This is sounding like a Dr. Zeus book, isn't it? You do not want this to happen, an alien egg to escape and to infiltrate the crew. So you can use your Docky Ockies to keep your eggs fresh.
So don't be afraid, fans. If you need to use your Docky Ocky on a jockey, then it is definitely the way to go. But for those who are wondering, are they fit for use for just about everybody? So apparently they are. Is that right, Mr. Aron?
That's right, because Docky Ockies, so simple, even women can use them eventually.
Oh, cheapers creepers. So, fans, if you want to know what these products are and when you can get it from the stores, I tell you what, there we go. The Docky Ockies in multiple colors, just like now the Star Trek series, red, greens, and blues. They are ribbed for extra grip, and that's always important. And I tell you what, if you want to drag your Suitech through time, the Docky Ocky is the way to go. What do you reckon, fans? If we manufactured that and put that into Aron's store, do you think it would just be a massive hit or what?
I know Guy had probably used some. I'm pretty sure he would be able to use some Docky Ockies at some point.
Mate, the Docky Ockies. Don't be surprised if you see more commercials about this in the future, because this is our ploy. We're gonna make millions and billions of dollars out of this. So there you go.
Yeah, we take
Absolutely
a joke and we take a joke and use it like 3 or 4 times way past its expiry date. So expect this to be going for quite a while.
Indeed. Aron keeps his eggs in bondage. Oh, geez. Well, all got bird flu at the moment, so it's not a good thing. But what's the deal with that, Mr. Aron? So, very, very good. Anyway, so that was a bit of yes, a bit of fun, shits and giggles. But yeah, he actually used the Nocky strap, a genuine one, in the show. And I could have got the still of it and go, holy shit, what are the chances of that? Anyway, very, very groovy. People from overseas watching this will probably have no idea what we're talking about. It's okay. We're about to move on. All right, so some news has come up. I got a message from Penguin Overlord. I'm going to be bringing that up very, very soon, Penguin, so don't run away just yet. We've got one more thing to get through. Sue Suck Ek. Yeah, good. Go back to New Zealand, dude. What can I say? So, yes, very, very cool. On another note, now this got announced the other day. They're doing a remake, apparently, of Enemy Mine, and I'm scratching my head, going, "Why? What's the?" And apparently, it's a bit of a big deal, Mr. Aron. People are like, "Oh my god, this is really, really exciting stuff." You know, the film was made in 1985, the original one. Maybe for the 50th anniversary, 40th anniversary. What's the deal? Do you reckon? We'll just keep this one relatively short. Yeah,
I actually think this just goes into the pantheon of movies that no one expected a remake and no one's going to go and see. Stuff like Point Break, the remake, or some of these other ones that it is out of left field. I do actually really love the original Enemy Mine. It's quite a good sci-fi, hard sci-fi movie in a time where everything was space action adventure. But I just do not know if there is an audience for a remake of Enemy Mine.
Yeah, I don't know what they can sort of gain out of it. So for those who don't know, the original Enemy Mine, a human and a Drac land on a planet together. They're obviously enemies. They've never met before, never seen each other. They've just been at this war for 1,000 billion years, whatever. And they've got to learn to survive together because of the harsh environment that they're in, and they have communication issues and whatever else. And on that level, it's actually quite good. It's just effectively a big talking piece. The human guy is trying to convince the Drac guy that he's an alien and blah, he's the bad guy, and vice versa. And they just sort of figure their shit out, so to speak. So, but yeah, you are right. For making it today, don't know why.
Do you remember a 60s movie with Adam West, and I think it was called Robinson Crusoe on Mars?
Crusoe on
That
Mars,
always
yes.
reminded me of a prototype Enemy Mine. It was the same kind of thing.
Yeah, so a couple of things here. So Penguin is still joining us. He's in London at the moment, which is good. We have someone from London, someone from Ukraine, which is absolutely awesome. And you asked about why they're doing Enemy Mine, and he's actually suggested they're running out of ideas. Colin said, don't mess with the classics. I wouldn't class Enemy Mine as a classic until it came up in the feed. Most people have probably never even heard of it, never even seen it. Regarding the Docky Ockies, Moneybags reckons that the letter from the BBC to buy the idea from us, yes, it'll be $1 billion, which is a very, very groovy. But yes, I tend to agree with you. It's just like, who cares? Unless I don't know what they can do differently that they haven't done before. I mean, an alien is an alien.
CGI.
Yeah, but
CGI.
Unless it looked really, really alien, like a bug from Starship Troopers or whatever else, I don't really get the gist of it. So.
Well, I don't know if you know the history of it, but the whole thing with the human mining colony and stuff was changed and added on by the studio because they didn't think there was enough action. So maybe they'll film the original script, which was probably even more boring than the one we got.
Well, yeah, I mean, you do wonder how many people out there have actually seen the movie and remember it. I haven't seen it for decades, but anyway, see where it all leads, guys. And Penguin, yes, you win the car. It was Louis Gossett Jr. That's correct. He played the Drac, the alien, which is very, very cool. And even Kelvin said, yeah, the Return of Starbuck and Galactica 80 is a bit like Enemy Mine. Actually, it is because he lands on the planet with the Cylon. Yeah.
Do you know what I don't like about Enemy Mine? All that woke stuff they slipped into it with Gossett Jr. having a baby. Come on.
Oh, that's right. He had a kid, didn't he? Because he's when male and female together, hermaphrodite, or is that the term? Yeah.
I don't know. You're the one that visits those sites.
Figure it out. I mean, bail me out here, dude. You like, whatever. I'm going to stop. All right, I'm going to get myself in a lot of trouble. So. But yeah, actually, yes, the Galactica 80 thing, that's exactly like Enemy Mine. In fact, if anything, that was a better story because you could relate to Starbuck and you could relate to the Cylon, which is a very, very cool. Anyway, so we're going to move on. Enemy Mine, we'll see what happens. Now, the first thing that Penguin Overlord piped up here was RIP Oddball, woof, woof, woof. And of course, we're not going to go with the negatives waves, but we're going to have a bit of a quick chat about Donald Sutherland, who passed away, I think it was this week, actually, which was really, really sad to hear. The funny thing about the career of Donald Sutherland, and of course he's been around for decades, is that he's actually done a lot more pop culture movies than most people are completely aware of. And I did some searching today, and there's some I haven't seen, right? And there's some I have. And of course, yeah, he's famous, absolutely infamous for his, I was going to say Dirty Dozen. What was it? Kelly's Heroes movie. But guess what, fans? For those who didn't know, before you had Sarah Michelle Gellar and before you had Anthony Held as the Watcher, of course, good old Donald was the Watcher before the Watcher term became a term in Buffy the Vampire Slayer, the movie back in the early 90s. Remember this one, Mr. Aron?
Absolutely. The movie was a bit more tongue-in-cheek than the TV series, and he informed Kirsty Swanson that the birthmark on her leg was what proved she was the vampire slayer. She's like, that dirty thing, I had that removed years ago, kind of thing. So he had it wasn't the biggest role, but it was one of the I guess it was an interesting role for him to take because he grounded the movie where everyone else was kind of playing comedy.
Yeah, exactly right. So it's really some good stuff. And when you look at, because I know there's a couple of mentions here about Invasion of the Body Snatchers and a couple of other things, but there are other things that have come up along the way. As I said, I haven't seen all of these, but chances are you probably have. He was in Puppet Masters. Now, is that something you're familiar with at all?
Well, do you know what? I know the Puppet Master horror. This must be Puppet Masters, a different franchise, I think, because I don't remember Donald Sutherland in it. So I think this is more of a spy drama. I don't really.
Could
But
be.
while we're on it, though, Russell can get us some fun facts because he cut his early career on some very vintage television, The Avengers and I think The Champions and stuff like that. What Avengers episode was he in, Russell? Because I don't remember him being in The Avengers. There you
That's
go.
surprising.
So,
Yeah.
William.
Yeah.
Or William, which one was he in? Because I don't remember which one it was.
No, I'm not entirely sure, to be frankly honest with you.
Space Cowboys was
Yes.
another great one.
Yes, yeah. It did really, yeah. There's a whole lot of pop culture things. Penguin mentioned clip. We're just sticking with the pop culture thing, the sci-fi, horror, that sort of stuff. Otherwise, if you start branching out into his mainstream material, we'll be here for hours. Castle of the Living Dead. Oh, there you go. Fancy that.
Okay.
Robert A. Heinlein, Puppet Masters. Okay, yeah. As I said, I just researched this today. He was in Virus, apparently. So, Virus lands on a Russian ship, and everybody has a bit of a hard day at the office. And it's like, oh, how about that?
I was gonna ask you about this. I don't know if you remember. I think Derek Screen organized a screening of Virus through probably Multiverse in the Greater Union in the city, I think. Were you at that one? I think it was the only cinematic. I remember seeing Virus at the cinema because it was a Multiverse event. It's a bit of a B movie, but it's still entertaining. I mean, I think it had Jamie Lee Curtis in as well.
Yes, it did. I wasn't aware that there was a screening, and I didn't go to it. And I just checked up today, and it clearly was a bit of a box office bomb for what it cost and what they made back. It kind of really didn't work, which is a bit unfortunate. But so other than that, I don't know much about it. And a lot of it was set on a Russian ship, if I recall, too. So, what? Virus, a Borg ripoff movie. Oh, okay. Oh, because that's right. It's alien. It's freaking out robots and cybernetic dudes and whatever.
Yeah. Basically, the tech was taking over the human. The virus was like a cyber virus type thing.
Oh, okay. There you go. He was in Avengers: The Superlative, and he's Superlative 7.
The Superlative 7. I do know that episode, so I'll have to check that out again. I would presume you're going to mention it. He was in one of my favorite, one of the scariest growing up sci-fi movies, Invasion of the Body Snatchers.
Which we're going to get to at the very end. We've got to finish with the best. So, mate,
sorry.
Settle down, mate. It's like a docky, mate. You just got to take a chill pill, son, and don't hold on to the soup tick that quickly.
The best is Animal House.
Oh, is it? Oh, there you go. It was in American Haunting. This is obviously a horror-related thing. I mean, you're a bit of a horror dude. Do you remember this one at all?
Yeah. He has played, he has an amazing career. When you have a look at his career, he's up there with Christopher Lee, where you know a few of the really popular movies, but he's in hundreds of productions, and this is one of those, which was good, but it wasn't ever one that really broke him. I think he was often hired at the end of his career, and when I say the end of his career, the last 20 years, to add gravitas to a movie. So they might have a cheap movie and get him in it, like by blowing the budget on him to sort of his name adds weight to the movie. And The American Haunting, I think, was one of those where he was chosen to sort of add a bit of weight to the actual movie because it wasn't ever going to be a box office smash.
Yeah, that's cool. Penguins mentioned first film roles in 1963. Oh, I actually thought it would have been earlier than that, but that is actually very, very cool. But very lucrative and very accomplished career. This one I do remember, Ad Astra. I actually forgot he was in this because I think it's only a small role, if I recall. But that was an interesting sort of movie. And do you remember this at all, dude?
Yeah, that was 2019. It was a good movie. It's worth checking out if you like sci-fi. I remember enjoying it. I don't actually remember that much about it. I didn't remember he was in it, to be honest.
Yeah, because I think that's the Brad Pitt movie, isn't it? Where he gets sent out to a space station out near Saturn because his old man's up there going completely. Who was it? Tommy Lee Jones, and going completely radio rental. But it's funny. Donald just pops up and he's only in a short scene, and I thought, oh, okay, so Ad Astra per ad. Oh, okay. You're good at Latin. I'm not.
Brutus.
Two Brutus, exactly right. Guy said that Ad Astra was awesome. It was slow, and it was one of the few films once again that actually had no sound effects for the space scenes when they're on the moon and they had a bit of a fight between some other dudes who are on their buggies, and there's no sound effects at all. It was really well done, very 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 effective. So
but Dads, the Acolyte showed us there's fire and smoke and everything in space, so it was totally wrong.
Oh, mate, what can I say, eh? So, but yes, Ad Astra was a good movie, regardless of that. And oh, mate, the old Acolyte. Oh, the last episode came out last night. Oh my God, this dude's getting sliced and diced everywhere. They're trying to think of a name for the Sith Lord with the helmet. Someone said Zipper Face because all the teeth coming around looks like a zipper. Oh yeah. Anyway, we digress. So there you go. But anyway, so so Donald obviously did a lot of cool stuff regarding pop culture, but of course, I reckon his biggest claim to fame, other than Invasion of the Body Snatchers in recent years, of course, had to be President Snow from the Hunger Games series. I love these movies. I thought they were fantastic, and he was an awesome bad guy, right?
Yes.
Absolutely awesome. And the way it all ended in Mockingjay Part 2, spectacular. I thought, yeah, absolutely nailed it, which was very, very groovy.
Yeah, it is good that I think a lot of actors, have their serious parts of their career and often treat, I guess, fantasy sci-fi, this type of thing, is not high on their list. But he obviously did, because he did a lot of genre related movies, and it was good that his career probably wasn't as successful in the middle part of his career, but he came back strong with the Hunger Games. And of course, it was one of those franchises up with Lord of the Rings, Harry Potter, and things like that were huge for sort of that 10 years, or that generation of kids that grew up with them. So he will be immortalized as President Snow.
Oh, it's fantastic. With a cast of all these young people, he's like one of the oldest people in the cast, and his character is absolutely spectacular. And it's just a fantastic storyline or arc of his character, how he starts off in the first movie and where it all ends up when his entire government collapses and falls down. And of course, Katniss discovers that the whole thing was a massive setup. Spectacular. Even if you don't like the Hunger Games series, you can at least watch the film and all the films and see how he portrays his character. It's always him against her, at the complete obliviousness of everybody else. And for that reason alone, he was fantastic. Absolutely shown. Regarding the bad guy from the Acolyte, Darth Gimp, I suppose that was coming, wasn't it? So there you go. And of course, everybody's yapped on it.
I got a good one. I got a good one. You know how he was stalking the sister for a long time? Call him Zippy Long Stalkings.
You're a freaking idiot. Anyway, back on to serious topics. Okay, always with the negative waves, and there was certainly plenty of negative waves in this movie because it was Invasion of the Body Snatchers, a remake of the classic 50s movie. Absolutely fantastic. What happens when people are getting taken over by aliens, Mr. Aron? What is the deal with that? And of course, Matthew Farrell, I think was his character's name, if I'm not mistaken. I could be mistaken.
Yes.
How good was this movie? I haven't seen it for a long time, but I remember seeing it on TV and go, that is just an outstandingly good flick.
Well, I think it's a movie that could only have been made in the 70s, where stuff was still bleak and you could get away with having, a downer of an ending. We should do a topic one week maybe on sequels that are actually better, not sequels, remakes that are better than the originals, because there isn't one. There isn't a lot, but I would say this is one of them where I would much prefer this one. The original one is a fantastic movie. I think it was meant to be a reaction to the infiltration of communism.
Yes.
This one is more relevant as we go along, with people becoming dehumanized, I think, and I see this with technology these days. There was a remake of this again, I think, with Nicole Kidman and James Bond. What's his name? Just called The Invasion, and they changed a whole lot around, and it wasn't as good. And there was another one in the 2000s as well, which was okay, but this was the definitive version for me. Now, you would remember growing up, there's some scenes in movies that everybody knows, and the one in this one is where the hobo falls asleep next to the dog, and you get like the alien reanimates the hobo with a dog's head.
Yes, that's right. And that's when the girl screams and gets caught out. I thought you were going to say this the moment, and this has been brought up by Karan. He said his teacher told him watch Body Snatchers, top movie. That ending deserves more credit. And what an ending when we discover that our little hero has actually turned into a pod. Spoiler alert, 45-year out-of-date spoiler alert or whatever it is. Absolutely spectacular. And I was like, mate, did not see that one coming back in the day when twist endings was still a bit of a novelty. So, yes, and the Penguins actually mentioned about the hobo head on the dog. So, what do you reckon, eh?
So, there's just one more movie I'd like to add. And this popped up on Netflix, and I didn't know He had made it, and it was really entertaining. If you like, it's a genre movie. It's kind of like a Twilight Zone episode. I think it's called Mr. Hardican's Phone, where he plays a curmudgeonly old man who nobody likes, and his family hates him, and he's incredibly rich. It must be one of his last roles. I think it's only about a year or two old, actually. And of course, he dies with a cell phone in his pocket. And he's made quite a close bond with this kid who came in to read with him, read books to him for years and years and years. And then, of course, he's dead. And then messages start appearing on the cell phone that's been buried with him. Very, very Twilight Zone kind of episode. Not an absolutely blow your socks off amazing movie, but if you've got an hour and a half and you want to watch something decent, it's quite a good watch.
Very, very cool. And you are right. I've actually discussed this on other shows. There are some remakes of classic movies that are superior to the original. Even Penguins made a mention about Carpenter's The Thing was a remake. Yes, we know that, and that was definitely an example of that. So there's a good discussion to have. I love this one from Russell. Right, in the the Kidman version, you couldn't tell the real Nicole from the pod. Oh, cop that if you don't mind, umpire.
Yes, you could. Yes, you absolutely could. The real Nicole had no emotions or warmth.
Oh, jeez Louise, where's that coming from? Holy guacamole. Anyway, so that's, I mean, we've covered off very, very quickly, very, very briefly, but we at least wanted to acknowledge it. You know, Donald Sutherland, fantastic actor, did a lot of good pop culture stuff, both horror and sci-fi. And fortunately, those roles will be remembered forever, and which is awesome. So never have the negative waves, fans. That's all I can tell you. So stay positive all the time. Very, very cool. All right, guess what, fans? Guess we're right on half past. It is now time for this.
A question.
So, a question without warning, and this is for our Mr. Aron here. Once again, I'm going to chuck this in. He hasn't been pre-warned or wised up at all as to what's coming up. Completely throwing him right out there. Okay, so the question I got for you, sir. Is it possible for a brand new sci-fi toy line to become a massive media franchise? And the inspiration behind that is that, I mean, obviously we're referring to Transformers there, because Transformers released in the 80s, and it's still a massive franchise in the media with movies and things being produced today. Master Universe has followed a similar line. Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, to a large degree, has also followed that line. But can a brand new toy line that does not exist as of right now, first product comes out tomorrow, is it still possible for something to be a massive hit, or is that bandwagon gone?
That's a really interesting and hard question to answer, because I can't think of anything in recent years that has had the longevity of some of the toy lines launched in the 70s and 80s. And the reason is because children these days, who would be the base of creating a new franchise that goes for years and years, are not obsessed with toys anymore. The closest I could give you to something that's launched recently that is huge and has stayed huge is Minecraft. But that started as a video game. Yeah. And there is Lego and toys and stuff, and they are popular, and it's not going away, but it's not a super franchise that makes all its money from the toys. The toys are still an offshoot from the game. Apart from that, you do get stuff that, again, when you say something new, it'd have to capture kids, not just adults.
Yep.
Five Nights at Freddy's is one of those things. Again, it was a video game, and that was massively, massively popular for a couple of years. It used that formula that's really good for kids. You can't watch it, it's too scary. So every one of those little kids wants to watch it as soon as they hear that. Scares their socks off. And they did release figures, and the figures sold okay, but then a movie came out like last year, and they didn't release any merchandise for the movie, but they should have, because suddenly all the figures that were released a couple of years ago have just shot up in value on the secondary market because kids do want them. But if I was going to be investing money on something that would be long lasting, I would put my money on computer games, not toys anymore, because I do think the people who buy toys are guys 30 plus.
It's a very good point, actually.
Nothing new is going to really take off. The only thing, I mean, this is going back 20 years now, pop vinyls have done it. where they are massive. They're not as popular as they were, but they're not going away anytime soon. But they're not something that created anything new. They just took every franchise people loved and used it and put a new product out. I guess you could say that's a massive new success. I mean, it's in the
So
last 20 years.
with that in mind, is it possible? There are some comments I'm going to get to in a second. Is it possible that someone in the pop vinyl infrastructure is saying, "Can we make movies out of pop vinyls just like they've made movies out of Lego? You know, all CG, blah 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 blah." They haven't done it yet, but is that beyond the realms of possibility? Because that is actually heading down that path of saying, well, it started off as a toy, so to speak, and it ends up becoming a media franchise. Pop vinyl, the movie. Is that conceivable?
I think it would be. I think they must have thought of it. The thing that does it for me with that is, can you imagine the rights nightmare it would be to try and get? Because you make a pop vinyl movie, unless you use all the popular characters, it's not going to work. You can't. They might have Freddie Funko because he's the mascot of pop vinyl, but everyone else, there is no pop vinyls that they've made that I think you wouldn't need to get clearances for. Maybe there's some historical characters, but apart from that, it might be more expensive to make than you think just because of the licensing.
So no one's made a mention of it, and if anybody was to bring up Barbie, obviously the Barbie movie came out last year, but that was just one film. That's not that was like, I'm talking about an actual franchise where there's multiple sequels and prequels and blah 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 blah. So Barbie doesn't cut the mustard. It was just a one-off big hit. Okay, so I thought I'd just clarify that. A couple of comments. Michael said, it just said what you said, actually. It would be difficult these days. Attention spans don't exist, which I think is really interesting. So a product line designed for children wouldn't appeal to them. And I agree with you unless it's tied in with the game. Kelvin said, Bluey started off as a TV series. There might be merchandise for it, but that's in reverse. Okay, so it's easy to...
I'll tell you something.
Go on.
I'll tell you something crazy about Bluey. There is a collector's fan base. Bunnings here released a couple of years ago a set of Bluey garden gnomes. You know, they've done Star Wars ones and stuff like that. They did a Bluey set. So I think they were about, $29 when they came out. When you look at the sold items for a set of them on eBay, they're consistently going for $10,000 for a set of Bluey garden gnomes. I mean, that's not kids buying them. That's like someone in Turak. But that's crazy.
Yeah, so either way, it doesn't fit what we're talking about here because it's easy to start with the media franchise and then produce the merchandise after the fact. William said Captain Power of the Soldiers of Future was a show created because of the toy line, which meant it ultimately failed. And there's been a lot of failures, but it's kind of funny that the three big ones, to say Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, Masters of the Universe, and Transformers, all originated in the 80s. And they're still around even today. I mean, they have their moments where they go quiet, but then they all come back again, and there's something that comes out. There's a new movie or a new TV series or whatever else, and they just keep thriving. And I thought, is it possible if you were like at Mattel or Hasbro and you go, you know what, we need to create something brand new, remembering all these products at one point never existed, someone had to sit there and go, we need to break into the market, let's do this. And it just turns out to be this gigantic behemoth of a franchise. Whether that can even occur today, and based on what you said, that sounds highly unlikely, which is really surprising when you think about it.
Look, I mean, when we're saying something new, I'm just thinking of something in the last 20 years, so the generation after us. There is a product called Beyblades, which are fighting like tops that have gone away and come back a few times, and the older ones have gone up in value. I guess Pokemon was something that was totally new. It's had its 25th anniversary, and that will never go away, and any toys or cards or whatever gets bigger and bigger and bigger and holds its value. I mean, there are card games like Yu-Gi-Oh! And things like that. I guess trading cards in general, if trading cards came out for something new, I could see that taking off more just because it has a niche collectors of cards. And the other thing that this century, I think Harry Potter might be 99, the first movie came out. But even that, which is massive, they've done a couple of toy lines, but it's not something that's constant.
No.
And that it's got into, and it still wasn't enough to sell billions of toys.
Yeah, it was mainly the books. And I realized I have to retract what I said earlier about Barbie. Barbie, of course, started in the 1950s, so it's not a new franchise. So I've got to retract what I said there because Chrissy said Barbie had a TV series and several animated films. That's great, wonderful. But we're talking about brand new. What's like something that can be created tomorrow, right? It gets released on the stores tomorrow rather than something's been around for decades and decades and decades. Did Avatar toys ever take off? No. Don't forget the films came first, right? Which is not relevant
That's
to what we're
quite
talking about.
crazy because the first Avatar movie, like
No,
it
no.
beat Titanic. It was the biggest movie
Yeah.
ever, and they released toys and it didn't sell. And then they did it again with Avatar 2. They released toys and they sold a bit, but it's not like people come in and go, "Oh, where's all your Avatar toys?" It's really funny how and Avatar was enjoyed, by older guys who
Mm.
do usually collect toys, but they didn't go for them. It's really, really weird.
Yeah. I forgot what I was going to say. There are too many shows and movies to be as impactful. Yes, and it's just funny how it's a part of like the way the world has just changed significantly. A toy line that becomes a media success. I personally think that the rights issue, notwithstanding, a pop vinyl something or other could be the next go. But I agree that they'd pay a fortune for all the rights, but the return on investment could be there. But to start
Mm.
something up tomorrow, and so for the sole purpose of it selling a billion toys and making movies and TV shows, that's probably not going to happen.
The,
It's going to work in reverse, as we said. The movie comes first, and the toys come after. Yeah.
the one thing that could happen, you could
Mm.
have a comic book character that became as popular as like Deadpool or Harley Quinn. They're two relatively new characters,
Yeah.
sort of in the in the whole life of comic books. They're the newer ones
Mm.
that have done really well. I'm sure in the future there probably will be new characters introduced that do become iconic. They might not be everyone buys them, but I could see there's going to obviously be more characters that are as
Mm.
popular as Harley Quinn or Deadpool at some point. So, yes, but will they be like the dollar signs in your eyes,
Mm.
money makers for the
Yep.
creators? Who knows?
Because the funny thing is, of course, you produce the toys. This is not today, but decades ago, whatever. You produce the toys, they sell out great. You make movies and TV shows, then you produce toys for the movies and TV shows, then they sell great. And so it's just a continually refreshing cycle. And that's the reason why there's
Yeah,
so many Transformers movies out now, even if the toys do or don't sell. That's sort of the mindset behind it all. It's been very, very successful. So, but yeah, it could be
yeah.
an interesting decades from now. People could still be talking about stuff that was created in the 1980s, or as you said, even like Pokemon or whatever else. And new stuff. No, not going to happen. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. There are those that believe franchises here began out there.
Yes. I think any toy has to have considerable play value, and I think most successful genre toys have been ones which are still who have sold if they've been Fred Nurk adventures. Yeah. But yeah, kids not wanting toys but wanting more games. Yeah, I tend to agree with you on that one. I think the gaming industry is a completely different discussion, and toys from games are more likely to sell than toys just out of fresh air. So it's a very good observation, actually. So fascinating stuff, Mr. Aaron. What do you reckon?
Well, it really is one of those things where, we both work in the shop. And if you look at the demographic, the people that buy stuff, if we started to aim all our stuff at like, 6 to 16-year-olds, we'd go broke pretty quick.
Well, we know that for a fact because if we got all these little, My Little Ponies, millions and billions of little ponies, and they're all sold to us, a whole collection of little ponies from one girl, and we've got more freaking horses in the goddamn store than you'll find at the Spring Racing Carnival at Flemington. So,
We've
unbelievable.
got more horses than the 4 and 20 pie factory.
Absolutely. All right, so that's the end of that discussion. Question without warning. Now we're going to go into the last topic of the conversation. This is actually one that Aaron brought up, which I thought was kind of interesting. And it's the kind of thing some people will probably mentally block out of their minds, right? But for most TV series, they run for X many years, 1 year, 2 years, 5 years, 10 years, whatever, and they finish on an end. And it's the greatest thing ever. All good things from Star Trek, The Next Generation. Goodbye, farewell, and amen from MASH. Absolutely awesome. Wraps the series up. You sit back, relax, and go, Now, to be fair, some series get cancelled before their final episodes are aired and they just stop. But what we're here to talk about is the opposite end of the food train. We're talking about TV series finales that absolutely sucked big time. And of course, the most biggest one there, of course, was from Enterprise. The last episode of Enterprise. What was the deal with that, Mr. Aaron?
Well, it was really an encore episode for Next Generation, wasn't it? So we've watched these
Yes.
characters for 3 or 4 years. It was getting good because what happened? The studio by the last series didn't care anymore, so they said to the writers, "You can do what you want." And the writers started doing all these things where they bring the Gorn back and all this really interesting stuff. And then someone puts on their thinking cap and goes, "How about we squeeze one more Next Generation episode out of things before, like, the whole production of Star Trek's closed down?" And for all these people who really want a nice bow out for the Enterprise crew, we just get Riker and Troy talking about, like, this historical document about Enterprise. It was disappointing.
So I've only seen it once. Based on my memory, the entire series of Enterprise was a holodeck thing that Riker was dealing with, I think, to understand the past or something. I can't remember, right? And he's having a gas bag with Troy about his experiences. So the whole series was on the holodeck. That is crazy. That's like the Carringtons. Do you remember the Carringtons? I think it was back in the 80s. Somebody, Colby, gets shot and they, or it's from Dallas or whatever, and the whole season was just a dream. The person wakes up and it's Dallas and they wake up and go, oh, the whole series was a dream. Oh my God. Yeah. Dude.
Well, do you know what it enforces then? Riker was a total pervert, because how many, there was so many holodecks where he's watching T'Pau getting, like, gelled up.
Yes, it's like, well, the whole holodeck safeties were off. What can I say? So, and you know, the funny thing is, the irony is that after the series was, it is probably, hang on, I'm going to rephrase it. It probably sounded like a great idea at the time, and on paper it sounded like a good idea. When it got released, and the fans were completely burko. Even Jonathan Frakes said, "Yeah, we kind of screwed the pooch on that one a bit." That's not how you want your show to finish. You don't want everybody to walk away going, we completely cocked it up. So,
well, I think even the crew of Enterprise said they were pretty upset by the way it ended.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I remember there's been a few disappointments for me. This came up because of the recent Doctor Who end of episode, but I'm going back in time a bit. It's aged better than it was when it came out, but the final 2 episodes of the X-Files were at the time stinkers. They tried to do this thing, what they do in a lot of shows, where they wrap everything up by having a trial, and then the trial goes through all the witnesses over the last 10 years. So instead of getting a new story that wraps everything up, you actually get like a flashback episode. It's like shades of grey, and nobody wants to see that. Yes, it's nice that they try and go over all the old plot lines and tie them up, but they got bogged down with 9 years of continuity, and they had to show it because a lot of the audience wouldn't even remember what they were talking about. And so you have this 2-hour finale where you're just seeing everything you've seen before. And ultimately, because it's the X-Files, they never really, tie anything up anyway.
There wasn't enough X in X-Files. A few comments. Obviously, I've never seen it, but I know I've heard all about it. Game of Thrones popped up a few times. Captain Power laser pistols interacting with the TV. Oh, okay, that's from a previous discussion. Karan has said, "You notice with American TV shows don't close as well. A lot of talk about the show Lost and how bad the ending was. I mean, clearly they get pushed into a corner and they go, it's got to be the greatest thing ever, and of course it can just backfire." Russell, this is an interesting comment. Just to preempt the discussion, Game of Thrones last step copped a lot of crap. Doubt there could have been a last step which everyone would have been happy with. Yeah, that's a fair call. And regarding Enterprise, and I'm going to admit this is instead of saying they screwed the pooch, they screwed the Porthos. They screwed the Porthos.
Well, there's another show where they screwed the Daggett, which a lot of people agree wasn't the best ending they could have ever had, and that was probably the new series of Galactica, which is consistently fantastic. And then it gets to the end, and everyone's like, well, that wasn't satisfying at all. And in fact, there was previous episodes that might have ended the show better than if they had like gone on for the extra series they kind of did. What did you think of the end of Galactica?
I only saw it once, and I was a huge Battlestar devotee. I don't remember it that well. I think I just accepted it and said, all right, it is what it is, and I moved on. I thought, okay, the sum of the whole outweighed any negativity on the last bit. I kind of just dealt with it, but I've only saw it once, and that was a long time ago. But I did hear there's a lot of flack for it, and it was probably a little bit too out there, I guess, because they went on some really interesting directions regarding the series. But there's an interesting one here. I'm just going to push the right buttons. Here we go. Christy said a quantum leap. Yes. The whole thing of the poor bastard wants to get back home to his missus and all the rest of it. And no, he just keeps on leaping. Is that right, Mr. Aron?
Yeah, it basically ends with them saying, And one day he might make that leap that takes him home, but we're not going to show that to you. It was a really disappointing end to the series. It did like the time tunnel from the 60s that had one series, and it was incredibly popular. And the last episode had them leaping into the Titanic, which was the first episode, setting up this big loop, which meant that it wasn't very satisfying to viewers.
Russell's asked a question: the Blake 7 last step of the best ever or the worst? Definitely not the worst, not by a long shot. It was fantastic. If you didn't mind half your characters all getting killed off, but good on them for pushing the envelope and doing something completely left field rather than saying they all lived happily ever after. So
I would
rate quite
actually
highly.
say Blake 7 is kind of known for having one of the better, harsher endings. It might have disappointed people who wanted the Federation to go under or whatever, but I did think it was a good, hard ending.
This one also came up. This is Voyager, so it's a dodgy picture. So Voyager, and of course, we always knew they're going to get back to Earth, right? That was a bit of a no-brainer. They get back to Earth. And I think this is where it finishes. And it's just like, well, hang on, what happened to everybody? Did they all come back and they all get promotions? And, what happened to Harry Kim? Does he go back home to his parents because he hasn't seen them for so many years? They just didn't do that at all. And it was like, hang on, is there another episode we haven't seen yet? And it just stopped.
It is one of those things where shows, I don't think sometimes the producers of shows realize that if it's a travel show like that, the audience has traveled along with this crew and they do want to see what happens, after. Like, you can overdo it where you show too much and the ending is boring. But if you can find that sweet spot where they get home, everybody's happy, and then there's a little coda for every single character, so they're going okay. I think that was what was missing from Voyager.
Yeah, it was just weird. It's like, hang on, we've invested in these characters. They've all got this storyline, like Tom Paris, right? Remember, he came from a prison in New Zealand. What happens to him now? Now, what was his storyline? And as I mentioned about the Harry Kim thing, what happened to sort of like Janeway? And we just never got to find out. And of course, you got drip-fed little tiny bits, especially Janeway and other TV series, but the rest of the characters just gone. And I thought, you can wrap these things up pretty quickly in 30 seconds, 30, 40 seconds, just a nice little montage, everybody getting together and a few tears and whatever else. And it was just, it was a real letdown. It's like, oh, guys, what were you doing? So, yeah.
Well, I don't know if you'd have brought this one up, but it isn't a new thing. One of the sci-fi genre greats caused one of the biggest phone-ins when it finally ended, and that was the original Prisoner with Patrick McGoohan, where they had, you weren't even sure if the prisoner was the Danger Man that had been in his previous series, because it shows an agent retiring and him being taken to the island, and the island is far from a normal place. And you have the whole series with him trying to escape. And they almost did sort of a current end to the series, 40 years early, where today people would go, that's interesting and thought-provoking and what was happening. But at the time, it was so surreal and so strange. People were like, what was this crap? And they jammed the switchboards. It was one of the first times ever. And of course, Patrick McGoohan does what a lot of producers do. He goes, I knew what was happening, but I'm never, ever going to tell anyone, which infuriated people even more. I love The Prisoner. I actually love the ending because it is one of those what did I just watch endings.
Very, very cool. I never watched this series. Christy said Sequest, DSV. I know. Remember, as I said at the start, some shows, they get advance warning they're going to finish, and sometimes they just finish and they don't come back the next year and they left everything unresolved. I don't know what happened with Sequest. I never watched a drop of it. As soon as I heard that Darwin spoke, as soon as they're talking dolphins, I go, yeah, I'm tuning out of this show.
I think the trouble with that period, there was a good 10 years there where shows lived and died by the ratings. Sequest got 2 or 3 series, so it did better than most. I don't think they knew it. I think they thought it was cancel-proof because it was Spielberg, and so they didn't really have a satisfying ending. It was just the end of the series. The other one, which I really hated how it ended, and it was because it was cancelled, was Earth 2, because it was a fantastic setup. It kind of reminded me of a series Lost in Space. Fantastic actors, including Tim Curry, who turns up as like almost the Dr. Smith type villain in it, and then it just ended. And it obviously had a big story arc and stuff was being revealed each week. It was a really great world building series. I do remember when that ended, I was like, well, that's not satisfying. I was really invested in that.
Yeah. Guy has said Lost. It was bad. I never watched it at all. Did you?
Yeah.
Were you a Lost dude? Were you found by Lost?
I gave up on Lost because for the first maybe 2 seasons, it seemed like it had a plan. But then it kind of became obvious that they were making it up as they were going
Yeah.
along. So the first 2 seasons were really fueled by internet speculation of what the hell was happening and what was the black stone and the white stone and what was the smoke monster and who were the others and what was in the hatch. And the more they revealed, none of it was really profound or up to the actual setups. It was more disappointment than anything. And of course, spoilers, it turns out they were dead and they were in purgatory waiting. And people had guessed that the first series, and the producers came out and said, it is absolutely not that. You've got to watch to the end because it's all going to be a shock. And of course, that's what it was. So that was a very disappointing show for a lot of people.
They needed to take this idea from Quran and go into the writer's room and said, the Lost ending, the big guy ate them all. There you go. Unbelievable. Yeah, it is kind of funny. And there are some series where they've got to wrap things up really, really quickly. And sometimes it works. And there was a really good TV series for Battlestar called Caprica. They had to wrap it up really fast because the season was being cancelled. And the last 10 minutes of Caprica is absolutely outstanding, which, funnily enough, there'll be a video on Sci-Fi Zone next week regarding that. Another thing apparently that caused a bit of angst with people, I never saw this either. I never used to watch a lot of TV, was it Lois and Clark? At the end, they're apparently looking for a kid, and at the end, somebody delivers a kid, probably a super kid, and then cancer show. Nobody even found out what happened. What was the deal with that, Mr. Aron?
I don't remember getting to the end of Lois and Clark. I remember it being one of those shows that was really hyped up, and when I watched it, it was kind of, this isn't the version of Superman that I was really hoping for.
Yeah.
It was a bit too soap opera for me, and it is a really loved show, and a lot of people love it. But I wasn't disappointed by the end because I never got there.
Yeah. So apparently that's what happened. There's a baby dropped off at the door. They go, oh, it's almost like from like freaking Docky Who from the other night. And they go, beauty, awesome. Oh, this kid's got maybe superpowers. That's it. Roll credits. Penguin has said that Farscape was cancelled on a cliffhanger. Fans kicked up as thinking crowdfunded a 2-part TV film to tie it all up. Was that a canon? Was it canonized, that 2-part TV series, or just something that was made by fans? And
I think it was. That was kind of almost the same thing that happened with Firefly and Serenity, where it was cancelled and then they did the movie to try and wrap it up. And what you were saying about wrapping stuff up, the reverse happened to Babylon 5, where they said, right, you've got one series, and they moved it all forward and squashed all the answers in, and then they go, do you know what? We're going to renew it for another series.
That was so bad. I mean, not bad for it was bad for the show. It was okay for the storyline, but yeah, you're right. Into season 5, and you go, we got rid of our good best bad guys in season 4. We need new bad guys. Oh, let's just turn some psychopaths. What do you call it? I was going to say naturopaths, something or other paths. What do you call it? People who can read other people's minds. Help me out.
Telekinetic. Yeah.
Thank you, telepaths. Freaking hell, dude! I'm getting there in the end. They're the bad guys. So yes, exactly right.
It was
yes.
Kind of the same. It's probably not the topic. Kind of the same with Stargate, where
naturopaths. They Jesus Christ, dude!
Naturopaths. Yes, they should be the bad guys. The naturopaths. Yeah. They make everyone gluten free. But it's one of those things where with Stargate, they think the series is probably going to end because it's gone for 6 or 7 years. So they wrap it all up, and then they go, "We're coming back with more." So they have to introduce whole new villains and stuff.
Jesus, William, be quicker next time, son. I'll get telepaths like 4 hours ago. It is an interesting scenario.
He actually gave me the answer to that with his mind.
Well, you're freaking useless. I was like, help me out here, dude. I'm absolutely dying here. I'm thinking all these paths. I wasn't on the right path, or the right path, as it were, but I got there in the end. So there we go. Absolutely fantastic. Yeah, unfortunately, there are some TV series that absolutely suck the big one when it comes to their finales, especially if they're sort of planned finales. As I said, if they get cancelled and they don't come back, you kind of understand it. But when they're planned and they're written in advance and you go, mate, that was absolute rubbish, it could be very disappointing for sure. So
it is interesting because
what? Go on.
Sorry, Next Generation really showed everyone how to wrap up a series really well. That card game at the end really just sums the characterizations up, and the captain actually joins them for a card game. And then what producers seem to do is say we're going to subvert expectations and not give people what they want. The one thing I've realized is probably a surprise then a disappointment is not as good as something you see coming, but a nice ending. Because if you wrap stuff up nicely for fans, I think that's going to be the legacy the show's remembered by.
Yeah, no, totally agree. And of course, this discussion was brought on by the fact that the last episode of Doctor Who, which aired this week, no, last week, whatever it was, and fell flat for a lot of people's, even though the previous week's episode, the lead up to it was absolutely spectacular. So almost made it, but kind of didn't. Is that right, Mr. Aron?
I see this. Dave Hankin is making a comment about Rip It Off the Card being rubbish. We've got a new segment for that called Ripping Up Cinema Posters with Autographs on, and he has kindly donated a Terminator one to be in that that segment.
Yeah, very, very cool. Well, there we go, fans. Absolutely awesome stuff. And just for those who missed out on the start of the show, we're just going to do this one little thing. If you haven't done so already, be sure to run out and look out for your Docky Ockies. Okay, get your anything that can actually wrap up a Sutek has always got to be a good thing. So there we go. Merchandising created by.
I've got a great thing for that. Put it back for a second. I've got a great catchphrase for that. The only 6-pack you'll ever see in a sci-fi shop.
You're a friend. That is very good. That is very, very clever. Anyway, and by the way, Spankin is still apparently selling his kids, which is very cool, for $2 each, accordingly. So there you go. All right, we're going to have to wrap it up. But before we go, don't forget, as always, if you haven't done so already, be sure to check out the Sci-Fi Zone. So there, Sci-Fi Zone socials and YouTube and all that sort of stuff. New stuff coming out next week, including a new episode regarding Caprica, the TV series that I absolutely adored, coming out next Tuesday. Always new stuff coming up besides this show that we're on right now. And of course, for all your Docky Who needs, or if you want some Ocky straps, 6-packs or not, Aron's Collectibles is the way to go, Mr. Aron.
I'm happy to break up the 6-packs and sell them individually. Even I have a 1-pack. It's like one of those.
No, dude, you don't have it. What? You don't need a 6-pack because you've got a keg.
It's true. Yep, we have a great range of Doctor Who, but not just Doctor Who. We talk about Docky Who a lot, but we have retro 80s toys, action figures, cards, games, Star Wars, you name it. We've got something to do with it. So come on in, buy some items, have a chat, make Dags get something down heavy from the top shelf and then not buy it. That's one of his favorites.
Yes, exactly right. And I will be there on the store on Saturday if anybody wants to come past and say hello. Very, very cool. All right, we're going to buzz off. We're going to see you next week. There's no Docky Who shows. We're done with that. Watch some Acolytes. It's the only other Star Wars stuff that's going on at the moment. And we shall be back next Thursday. So be sure to party hard and rock on. And in the interim, make sure you stay nerdy. Okay, see you later. Take care.
Have a good night, guys.